All right. I am going to go ahead and get us started. Hello, good evening. Muy buenas tardes a todos y bienvenidos. My name is Natalie. We'll do some introductions in a minute, but I wanted to start with some accessibility notes for folks who need translation services. So super excited to have you all here. The note for anyone who is needing American Sign Language interpretation is to please look at the participants and pin our ASL interpreters. Anyone who is on the call and not speaking, not contributing at that moment in the conversation, please go ahead and keep your video off so that our ASL and folks can access that easily. And there's also a closed captioning option on the Zoom menu, which you can click. Y muy buenas tardes a mis hispanohablantes. Si alguien desea escuchar una traducción en vivo simultánea, favor de hacer clic en el botón Interpretación del panel de control de Zoom y puede seleccionar español entre las opciones ahí. If anyone has a challenge with accessing the closed captioning, the American Sign Language, or the Spanish, please just use the chat and one of the members of the team should be able to support. Si tiene algún problema con la interpretación simultánea, favor de usar el chat para comunicar con unos de nuestro equipo. So as everyone is getting settled in, please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself. If you are comfortable and able with the Zoom platform to rename yourself, you can rename yourself on your computer. You can click the little 3 dots and expand to more to share your full name, and if you'd like your neighborhood and preferred pronouns. If you are watching over live stream and want to engage directly in the conversation, please do go to our website so that you can access the Zoom. So the website is resilient-nj.com. And from there, you should be able to immediately access the meeting resources. And I will look to one of my colleagues to please drop that link in the chat. So by way of introducing yourselves, how did you hear about the meeting tonight? Please go ahead and share your name, the neighborhood you reside in, or work or play or pray in, and how you heard about this meeting. And as those are coming in, I'm going to turn over to my colleague Drew Curtis to share a few community meeting guidelines.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate it, and good to be here tonight. See some familiar faces in the audience, as well as some new ones. Just wanted to remind us of a few different guidelines for a respectful discussion. One, let's assume good faith in one another, because we're all here to make communities better together. We also want all voices to be heard, so know whether to step up and know when to step back. If you feel that you're the type of person who ends up talking a lot in situations like these, then step back a little bit and allow other voices to come up, and then vice versa. If you don't talk often, well, step out of your comfort zone and step up and please talk. We want to hear your voices, and we want to make sure all our voices are heard. It's also helpful to ask yourself, why am I talking to make sure that it's as impactful and insightful as necessary. And then please, let's practice respect. Let's recognize and respect others' feelings, background, and cultural differences. We use one mic here, where one person speaks at a time. So stay muted when you're not talking, please. And if you want to speak, there'll be plenty of time for questions and just comments when we get to the breakout rooms. You can just either type the word stack in the chat, or you can use the raised hand feature on Zoom. Either of them works too. And for now, please stay off camera unless you're talking. It makes it easier for our translators too. And then, but when we get into those breakouts, we'll encourage you to come off camera so we can all see each other and have a real face-to-face discussion. Thanks, Natalie. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Drew. It's a perfect transition. If you are like me, then you will likely be cooking up some mac and cheese for the kiddos right around this time. So I want to give you a sense for what to expect. We're going to start with about 30 minutes of a presentation about, where we're at and where we're going, and then move into breakouts, which is where we really hope that the dialogue comes in and ask that you, actively participate. For now, for these first 30 minutes, I will request that you kindly use the chat to flag your questions. We will allow some time to answer those questions. If we are unable to get to all of them, we'll make sure to follow up with folks. And so this is another invitation for those folks on Facebook Live to come on into the Zoom if you want to actively participate. We do have some folks monitoring the chat over there, but most of the conversation will be happening here in the Zoom meeting room. We're going to post these recorded videos. We are live streaming and recording this. We'll post recordings of the session in both English and Spanish on our YouTube channel, the website, and social media. So I want to start with a little bit of a project overview to give you a sense for what the Resilient Northeastern NJ initiative is. This is a partnership between the cities of Jersey City, Newark, Hoboken, and Bayonne, in partnership with Hudson County and two community-based organizations, Ironbound Community Corporation and Hope's Community Assistance Partnership. Our goal here is to develop a regional scale action plan to address the flood risk in this area of New Jersey. We're looking at other hazards as well, and we'll talk about that briefly later. But I want to flag that representatives from each of these municipalities and partner organizations sit on our steering committee, and in just a moment, I'll turn it over for folks to introduce themselves. This project is funded and administered by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and it's guided by a community advisory council made up of a diverse group of residents from all of the municipalities in our region. Our CAC formally meets quarterly, but we're in regular communications with them about our approach and our outreach, and they are a paid member of our project team. The consultant team that's supporting this initiative is made up of an interdisciplinary team of engineers, scientists, technology developers, planners, and you see all those organizations in that blue bar across the bottom. So quite a large group of folks advancing this work. And we are actively reaching out to and hearing from and connecting with and having small groups and interviews and various sessions with local, state, and federal agencies, with nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations, academic institutions, because we understand that flood risk in our region is an extremely critical conversation, particularly on a day like today where it's raining in Newark. And it is extremely critical to the overall success of our project that we hear from all of our key stakeholders. So today's agenda, its core purpose is to get your input on some of the suites of solutions that we've started to envision. So we're going to be evaluating where we're at with this regional resilience action plan. And if you joined our most recent meeting in February, some of the content's going to look kind of similar, but today's the very first time that we're meeting with just Newark representatives. And this month, Bayonne met on its own and Jersey City met on its own. And this conversation is focused on Newark neighborhoods, and we did not have that opportunity in February. So we want to share how we've incorporated the feedback that we've gotten so far. And we also want to take a look at our flood maps and some of the models that have been developed. I am catching myself from being too fast, so sorry to my interpreters. Getting excited. So like I said, we'll look quickly at maps from the flood models. And I want to announce that our next region-wide meeting is happening in early June, on June 8th. So please go ahead and mark your calendars for that next conversation, in which we will start looking at some of the risk analysis, particularly with regard to quantitative cost estimates. So these are options. This is not our final plan, and we want to check in and hear from you before we keep going? Are we on the right track? What do you want to make sure moves forward? What questions do you have for us? And as you'll see, we'll be moving into breakout rooms, which I'll explain momentarily, but in the breakout rooms is really where we have the sort of meat of this conversation. With that, I want to create an opportunity for our other steering committee members to introduce themselves. I'll start and then turn it over to one of the project management team members to call folks out. My name is Natalie Augusto-Filion, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Newark.
Thanks, Natalie. And you met Drew Curtis a little bit earlier. Drew, do you want to come on and formally introduce yourself?
Hello again. I'm Drew Curtis with Ironbound Community Corporation.
Beautiful. And we have Meg Kavanaugh on the line with NJDEP.
Hi, everyone. I'm a planner with NJDEP's Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning.
Great. We also have a former steering committee member on the line, Rob Thomas. Very glad to have you tonight.
Hi there. Yeah, it's a pleasure being here with everyone.
Right, and I think that's everyone. I'm not sure I see Community Advisory Council members on the line tonight.
Okay.
So very happy to see familiar names. Yep.
Thank you so much. You know, we're all very accessible and we're very eager to chat with all of you and one-on-one conversations or schedule follow-up meetings as needed. What we want to share is that this project kicked off about a year ago. At that time, we started with developing a large picture sort of regional vision and starting to identify the priorities that we share. That report is called our About the Region report, as well as our draft visions and priorities report. Both are open for feedback. You can access them on our website, and I'll ask somebody to drop that link in the chat. And so based on the feedback that we received in the spring, summer, and early fall, you'll see that that draft vision report already incorporates what we're hearing. So a unique piece of this program is that in addition to planning for the future flood scenarios, we're trying to the extent possible to incorporate and implement feedback that we're receiving right now. And the best way that we know to plan is to do it on your feet and to not just write something that's going to sit on a shelf, but to start getting projects and initiatives launched in parallel. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the following slide. So what does our engagement process look like thus far? As you can see in this sort of high level picture, we have most of our materials translated into multiple languages. We've done surveys and art. We have an incredibly diverse region, and so we have 10 different languages identified that are priorities for our outreach. We've been talking to officials and state agency leads. We've had 4 region-wide community meetings so far, and as well as small group and interviews and other community forums. Lots of information coming in from social media, from our hotline, from surveys, from emails, and we're trying to capture all of that into our materials. If you have ideas, and you always will, and I'm so grateful for ways that we can improve or increase the ways in which we are engaging and the way in which this message is getting out into our flood impacted communities and really all of Newark, please let us know about that. We can bring our meeting in a box to your neighborhood. In addition to
for the translators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In addition to those kind of specific point in time pieces of feedback, we have what we call our anytime feedback platforms. So we have this hotline that you can call at any time and leave a voice message or listen to updates about the project in our priority languages. We've got an app, we've got emails, and we've put all of that information in the chat here because we are very eager to hear from folks. So I wanted to spend just a minute sharing a little bit about the ways in which the feedback that we've received already has been incorporated into our initiative. One is that we heard that there wasn't enough incorporation of resident knowledge of flooding, no easy way to capture that. And so we developed this interactive flood mapper tool where folks can log in, take a photograph, and tell us about, stranded vehicles during disaster events, places where the flooding is regularly occurring, so that we can bubble that up into our analysis. We heard a lot of questions, specific educational questions about what can I do, how can my household be better prepared, and we created a video series and are adding to that video series, which you can find on our YouTube channel. And the importance of youth engagement has also been loud and clear, and so we've got a strategy for working with youth, including a program that is launching with Eastside High School shortly. We've heard that you can't think about flooding in a vacuum, and that we have to consider additional climate hazards, such as extreme heat and groundwater rise and other types of climate and natural hazards, in addition to flood concerns. And another exciting way that we have been planning on our feet, as they say, is that we submitted a grant application for funding from FEMA, from the Federal Emergency Management Agency or Administration. I can never remember what the A stands for, from FEMA, for the creation of what's called a resilience hub. And in this site at the Ann Street School, our proposal is to capture stormwater beneath the parking lot, leverage the solar panels that are being installed in the parking lot and on the building, in order to have the operational even if the power goes out, and then to make improvements to the building itself so that it can operate as a cooling center during extreme heat events. So all of that physical improvements would be coupled with education and engagement and a place to go to know what to do after a disaster and in the lead up to extreme events. Resilience hubs have come through as a very key recommendation that we're hoping to highlight in the plan. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the breakouts. These are some of the things that we heard during our visioning process. They've been used to guide the development of the solutions that you're going to see. We recognize that we want to bring together all of these pieces as we create a vision for the future. Now, Northeastern New Jersey faces many different sources of flooding. This conversation entails heavy rainfall, coastal storms, and tidal flooding, what can sometimes be called sort of sunny day high tides. There are also parts of a community that might rely on pumping to get sewage treated when the power goes out. Even without a storm, we have basements that flood. So we recognize that the sources of flooding are even further exacerbated by our sewer system, our combined sewer systems, and the degree of impervious surfaces that we have. And by impervious surface, I mean areas of the community where water does not naturally seep into the groundwater. I want to share a little bit, not too much detail, and we'll sort of zero in on this big Newark scale map in the breakouts, but just to give you a high level sense of our flood models. As part of the Resilient Northeastern NJ project, the state has developed new regional models of current and future flooding. They're a little bit different than what you might be familiar with from FEMA's flood insurance rate maps, which are primarily a tool to dictate how much you pay in your home's flood insurance or your business's flood insurance. These are looking at current day flooding scenarios, as well as a scenario 50 years from now in 2070. How much rain falls and floods our streets if we had a very common rain event, which is a 1% annual chance rainfall, or what people will call a 1 in 100 year storm. Where does that flooding look like? So this map shows the amount of rainfall that would occur over a 24-hour period. That's the sort of lighter color blue. And then there are little patches of the darker color blue, which show areas that are flooding as a result of a future sea level rise event, about 2.5 feet, 2.4 feet of sea level rise. as well as what that looks like with a 10% increase in rainfall in a future climate projection. So folks may not we all sort of have the lived experience of what rainfall looks like in our region, but you may not know that this is actually a very similar map to what Newark looked like during Irene and during Ida. We can see that much of the city can expect flooding during a heavy rainfall event. And it's not just concentrated in the roadways, it's distributed throughout the city. And you'll notice that there's not a huge amount of dark blue showing up. And that's because what you see with more rainfall or with a higher sea level rise scenario is simply more depth of flooding, not necessarily a broader extent of flooding, which is different in other parts of the region. I will say that this is a regional model that's a planning tool, so it doesn't incorporate the details of our drainage system and the capacity that our drainage system has. It's based on some assumptions. Now, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection also developed maps after Sandy. And basically, what you're seeing on the screen now is an attempt to ask ourselves, what would flooding extent look like if we had a Sandy in 2070? And this model basically treats the area like a bathtub. So it adds 2.4 feet to the high water marks that occurred during Sandy. As you can see, significant portions of the East Ward were impacted and will continue to be impacted if we don't plan effectively. This is what happens if we take no action when we're also considering sea level rise. Now, what kinds of solutions will help us address this huge concern that we have about flooding in our community? The solutions are very varied. We are looking at physical and nature-based solutions. We're also looking at policies and improvements to the way that we govern around decisions to protect our constituents from flood risks. And last but not least, and based on the feedback that we've heard from you so far, we're also looking at solutions that are related to emergency response and our preparedness. For this conversation, we're going to focus on the first four that's on the screen, and we'll hold off to the next region-wide community meeting in June to start thinking about the emergency preparedness actions, as we're doing some additional analysis at the moment. Now, I want to take a minute to recognize that all of the scenarios that we're looking at are very intentional about seeing the existing commitments and plans that the city has, as well as our activities that are under development. And some of those are listed here on the screen. I'm grateful to have with me today the city's planning officer, Chris Watson, who I'm going to turn over to now to share a little bit about Newark 360. Chris, take it away.
Hi, good evening all, and thank you so much, Natalie, for having me on this call. I know we're trying as much as we can to cross-promote the work we're doing. And I want to start off by saying congratulations to New Jersey, Resilient New Jersey, for the excellent work that they're doing in terms of showcasing some of our vulnerabilities, and so to help us give evidence to why we need to help fortify Newark's future. In New Jersey, for municipalities of populations 10,000 or more, it's important that every year we produce to the state a land use plan, and that land use plan is a result of a holistic master planning of municipalities. And we are so lucky to be at this moment where it's Newark's turn to do that. And I have a few slides, Nat, if you don't mind sharing slides. So we've titled this document Newark 360. And what is Newark 360, you may ask? Newark 360 is that 10-year blueprint for the physical development and of Newark with regulations as to how we can get to a city that is representative of our voices. You know, it's a way in which we can engage our community to hear how Newark is actually working for them, like what are some of the challenges, what are some of the strengths of our city, and how we can really convert those challenges based on the strengths we know we have. And there's really a collective vision and a collective vision of our voices where we set goals and we set regulations for the physical growth of our city. And we're happy to know that with Newark 360, we're really enveloping the entire process around these principles of health, equity, and resilience to ensure that Newark is a healthy city. It is a city where we can all see ourselves as part of the course of our development, and we are resilient in terms of fortifying our city for the future. And a lot of the work in terms of the resilience access is the type of work you're doing now. And we haven't started this process by not listening. First and foremost, we listened to Mayor Baraka and how he's instructed us through his Newark Forward agenda to really look at Newark through the eyes of safety, through the eyes of equity, empowerment, education, and how we can be more of a collaborative city. So the process, in a sense, is essenced by the Newark Forward agenda. And as planners, we have tools that we are limited by. And so for this particular engagement, we're using these 8 planning elements, we call them. The next slide, please. These 8 planning elements. And if you look at these 8 planning elements, you see how integral the work that you're doing right now is important to the Newark 360 plan, because sustainability and the environment plays a critical role in Newark's future. We're hoping to have a cadence of in-person meetings in the next coming weeks, beginning in May, and in all of our awards, where we can meet with neighbors where they are, talk about, again, these challenges as a city, talk about our strengths, and talk about how we can use these planning elements to fortify Newark's future. So this document really represents our voices. I encourage you all to jump on our website, newark360.org, where you can find a statistically valid survey. You can map your city. You can give us photographs of places you like, places you think are challenging, and you can really get to learn more about this process and how you can get involved. We also ask you to register so we can keep you informed as to when we'll be in your neighborhoods, and so you can come out and be part of this process. And I'll leave that also in the chat. But Natalie, thank you so much for having me for these couple of minutes and be able to talk about Newark 360.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you being here and for our coordination and our intentional efforts to make sure that we're leveraging each other's efforts. As you see, resilience in the environment and our parks and et cetera are just one of the many pieces that our master plan is handling. So I do want to share a little bit. We're going to go into more detail on this on the breakouts, but I wanted folks to have a high level familiarity with what we are going to be discussing in the breakouts. So the word scenario can have different meanings. In the case of this project, we are specifically talking about different packages of solutions. And the way we've structured these scenarios, we expect that our final action plan will mix and match. So these are not mutually exclusive. It's just a way of organizing information in order to be able to sort of advance different ideas to the next stage and to get really targeted feedback from you all. Now, because this is a regional planning effort, as I said before, Newark, Jersey City, Hoboken, and Bayonne are collaborating. It's a super complex region. We've been balancing the work of planning at the regional scale while also trying to address the hyper local needs in our neighborhoods with regards to flooding. And what we know for ourselves and what we've heard from you is that we need action now. It can really feel frustrating to join a conversation about planning when your basement has water in it, or when you are stepping into a big old puddle just across the street. And so that's why we've been working really hard to advance our implementation as we are doing this work. So we're going to get into more details on these scenarios in the breakout, and we will be drafting an action plan, which we'll be bringing back to you at our next community meeting. So for now.
Pause now for the interpreters.
Yes, ma'am.
One moment. Okay, we should be good. Thank you.
Of course. So for now, I just want to highlight a few of the other things that we are working on so that you are aware. We will soon have a draft report that has some of the information you'll see in the breakouts. I will flag that the slides that will be shared in the breakouts are available online right now. So if anybody wants to go to resilient-nj.com, you can access those slides for the breakouts. We're working on a video series about flood risk that we'll be releasing this spring. We're engaging different schools. We're actually kicking off a resiliency planning program with Eastside High School next week. And the technical team is putting in the hard work of thinking about how expensive some of these solutions will be to implement, a cost estimate that's going to help us in our prioritization and in our efforts to make the case for the needs for all of this work. We're also releasing a flood impact assessment report that takes our flood models and ties that to the risks as we understand it. And we'll be covering all of these topics in our 5th regional meeting on June 8th. Mark your calendars. So the very last thing before we move into breakouts, and wow, I'm doing pretty good on time, better than the 4 o'clock session. So I want to just create space for folks to ask questions in the chat, or to, as Drew flagged, type in the word stack, raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, unmute and ask a question. We're going to create a little bit of space for that right now before we move into our breakouts. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and explain how the breakouts will work, and invite you to pose those questions in any other ways, including the use of the breakout itself. So in each of the rooms, we're going to be talking through our scenarios, that is to say our solution suites, our sets of solutions. And what we're doing here is focusing in on areas where there are specific types or there's overlap in the kinds of strategies. And so we invite you to join one of the following breakout rooms. Breakout room number 1, which is going to stay right here. You don't have to do anything. Breakout room number 1 will cover the neighborhoods of East Ironbound, Doremus, Port Newark, Newark Airport, and Dayton. I see your question, Lenny. I'm going to come back to it in just a second. Breakout number 2 is focused on the Ironbound neighborhood. Breakout number 3 will cover the downtown area and what we're calling Upper Passaic for this conversation. That includes sort of Lower Broadway, Mount Pleasant, up to Woodside, North Broadway. And then on breakout room number 4, we're going to be having a conversation in Ivy Hill Vailsburg section, as well as Upper and Lower Roseville. Sort of, you'll see that kind of hashed part of the what should I say, the screen, the image on the screen right now. A lot of the solutions are sort of the types of solutions that will serve these other breakout rooms are available in this area as well. So you are invited to join any other of the breakout rooms if you happen to live in that hashed area. We're just, for our slides, for the purposes of our slides, we've zeroed in on these neighborhoods to show you some examples. So then I have a question about sewer drain borets. I don't know what that word is. And I guess I assume, Lenny, and you're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to pose the question with your voice. You're asking about the clearing of the, like lifting up the sewer drains and the catch basins and cleaning those out. Am I capturing your question effectively?
Yes, we had several machines to do that, to clean them out. And they all seem to be out of service. And every time somebody reports a drain that's clogged, they say they can't do it because the machine are not working. I believe we had 5. And it went down to 1 that was working and that broke. That's the last I heard. But to my understanding, none of them seem to be working now.
Okay, thank you for flagging that, because that is news to me. I know that our director of the water department encourages people to call and report when the drains need to be cleared out, but I did not realize that we had equipment out of service. I will definitely follow up on that. Thank you, Lenny. Okay, so unless there's another question, I do see that Megan has shared a screen to teach you how to get to the breakout room. So with the exception of folks who are staying in this main meeting room, That is to say, the folks who want to join the conversation about East Ironbound, Dreamersport, Newark, Newark Airport, and Dayton. Everyone else will shortly have a little button across your screen, a little tab across the bottom that says breakouts, and you will self-select which room you would like to move into. So as you'll see from this image here, you can click 2, 3, 4 and press the little join button, and then you will be in that space. We will be dismissing from that space. We have allocated an hour for that conversation. In some cases, it goes a little longer, and that is fine as well. With no further ado, I think I will invite us all to move into breakouts. Am I forgetting anything, team?
You got it.